I recognize Mr. Fitzgerald now for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I first ask unanimous consent to have a Washington Post article that is authored by Salvador Rizzo titled "The White House Slipshot Claim That Republicans Are Defunding the Police"? I would ask unanimous consent that that be submitted for the record. Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Brown, last Congress, Chairman Nadler introduced H.R. 9065, the Federal Bail Reform Act, which would shift the burden of proof from a defendant to government on bail decisions. The presumption for most criminal defendants would be pretrial release. In order to rebut the presumption, the government would need to show by a preponderance of evidence that release does not pose a high risk of intentional non-appearance in court or a specific or substantial risk that the person will cause bodily injury or use violent force against the person of another if released. The chairman has not reintroduced that legislation this Congress, and I'm not sure why. Might have something to do with bail reform issues in New York. Do you support this type of reform?
Congressman, I'm not familiar with the specific bill that you're talking about. When my office deals with the issue of pretrial release, we try to make sure that people who provoke, who are the most likely to be at risk of offending again or committing other crimes, or are likely to be a flight risk, that those people are detained pending trial.
So just in general, let me ask you, do you think that the danger an individual poses to society should be one of the factors that should be considered when making bail decisions?
As I said, we try to detain people prior to trial who prevent crimes from occurring. So if they are at high risk of doing that, then we think those people should be detained.
Okay, thank you. I would just say in general, and I know some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, a lot of what I think we're hearing today is kind of glossing over what's been going on for the last year, which has been a call to defund the police. And obviously, the polling shows something different now, or the rhetoric has changed dramatically in the last couple of weeks, so I'm not sure exactly where we're headed. But Mr. Brown, in 2018, DEA temporarily classified fentanyl-related substances as Schedule I under the Controlled Substances Act. This emergency scheduling order placed all of these substances based on their chemical structure and designated them as purely illicit drugs with a high potential for abuse and no reasonable medical purpose. This order has been previously extended 3 times by Congress, but without action from Congress, it will expire, believe it or not, this Friday. The Biden administration and my colleagues on the other side of the aisle refuse to pass a permanent designation unless it is accompanied by their preferred jailbreak bills that would release more criminals onto the street. Do you support the clean, permanent designation of fentanyl-related substances as a Schedule I?
Congressman, I'm not familiar with the specific designation or the history that you've described. What I will say is fentanyl is a very serious drug. It is doing serious damage throughout the country and specifically in my district, and it is an issue that we take very seriously.
Well, but I'm sure you're familiar with Schedule I and what that means and the parameters of that. Would you support the idea of making fentanyl? It sounds like you understand how serious this is. Would you actually support that?
I certainly understand what the scheduling is for the narcotics that are illegal under federal law. I'm just not familiar with the clean distinction that you were making or other related bills, but it is certainly a serious problem.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yield back. Madam Chair, I would yield my balance of my time to Mr. Jordan.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Mr. Bowman, I just wanted to follow up on